point, if I'm talking too fast, if I'm not being clear enough, just put a hand up and say, yo, calm down, slow down. So everyone, we're going to close our eyes. We're going to travel back in time to the year 1237 Berlin. Now, I've been doing this job long enough. The only person now closing their eyes is me, so thanks a lot, really. Okay, so 1237, open your eyes. A document passes by a local church announcing the birth of the city Berlin. Now, all Berlin was, up until that point, was a very small Slavic fishing village. So imagine this. These fishermen are walking around one day on this land. They get their boots stuck in the mud, and they say, oh, this damn buddel. So what does the word buddel mean? It's an old Slavic word referring to marsh or wetland. Berlin itself is very marshy, unstable, and you may notice that now and then in the city it smells kind of weird. Have you guys noticed this yet? Yeah. This odd smell. Keep in mind, it's not me, it's not the group, no. It's the smell of the marsh gases, the smell of the history up through the streets. Now let's fast forward. The 1420s, the Holy Roman Empire, controlling this area of land, sends down a family to cultivate the land itself. Now the family is called the Hohenzollerns, the Christian Knights from Nuremberg, and these Hohenzollerns will eventually be the Prussian royal family controlling the empire itself. Now, the Hohenzollerns are a really weird group. They're very good at one thing and they're very, very bad at another. They are horrible, and I mean horrible at naming their kids. Because if you're born into this family, your names are either Frederick, Wilhelm, or my personal favorite, Frederick Wilhelm. So these guys, I'm serious, I'm not joking. They're terrible at naming themselves. They're very good at a cycle of taxing the people, building an army from this money, and then conquering land. And then taxing more people within this given space, building even bigger army, conquering more and more and more land. So the cycle of tax, army, conquer is very successfully done up until the year 1701. Now that January 18th, Prussia itself is established as a formal empire. Now, at its height, Prussia is bigger than modern-day Germany. At this point, though, it's some disconnected pieces of land. So, northern Germany, northern Poland, all the way to parts of Russia, and down to pieces of former Czechoslovakia. Now, we'll fast forward again. 1871 marks the modern history of Berlin. The Franco-Prussian Wars occur. They defeat the Danes, the French, the Austrian kingdoms, and things are going very well for the Prussians. It's at this point smaller kingdoms in southern Germany, specifically Bavaria and Saxony, are getting super nervous. The Prussians are above them, they're great in war, they love nationalism, so it's only a matter of time before they come down and invade our land. And the idea they had is pretty great. They realized that although we're separate kingdoms, we all speak German, we all like Bier and Bratwurst, so why don't we spare ourselves a bloody conflict and join up to the larger empire? They do this. They invite the Prussian emperor to become their leader as well. He thus receives the title of Kaiser. Now from this point, Germany has been newly formed, and soon thereafter, 1900, turn of the century, as far as European cities go, Berlin was top of the tops. You would have had then over 2 million people living in this city. Now today, 2010, how many people live here? 3.4 million. So 3.5 million roughly now versus 2 million then. A very prosperous budding time for Berlin, and amidst several things. This massive pride in the last Prussian Kaiser, the Prussian military success, Germany gets involved in World War I. Now, the First World War begins in 1914, and this Kaiser says to the public, look, we will fight this war for 5 months, in and out, very quick. Does World War I last for 5 months? No. It waits for 4 years, ends in 1918, and after World War I, more drastic change takes place. Now, the Kaiser abdicates, he leaves. Prussia as an empire is dissolved, so it does not exist. Beyond that, Germany is forced to sign the Treaty of Versailles. Now, this post-war treaty itself has 3 main points that it mentions. First point says, Germany, you take the blame for this world war, it is your fault. Now, if we think about this in rational terms, them taking the blame for the First World War, it's a bit unfair, is it not? That's super unfair. Was it only Germany's fault? No. Yeah, exactly. We know all about this. Yeah. But the treaty says, though, and you're a history major as you talk, okay. The history says, though, you take the blame. The treaty says, you take the blame. Again, a really heavy burden to bear. The second point says is that you must enforce democracy within this country. And if we look at the past, when you force a political system on a war-torn people, do things work out that well? No. It'll take a long time for the public, the government, the economy to really stabilize. And the third point says you must repay the damage from World War I. War reparations. Now this would have been, from Germany, monthly payments of gold lasting all the way up until 1988. And the big problem was no money in the country at all. So the best option was, instead of actually, physically working to make money, how about we print and make money? Now, when you print money in huge numbers, what usually occurs? Inflation, okay. Within this case, it's called hyperinflation. To give you an idea how wild this was, if you came to Berlin in 1919 with $1 American, it was worth 4 Reichsmarks. So 4 Reichsmarks, $1 US buck in 1919. Not bad. Came back to Berlin by Christmas of 1923. That December, $1 US was then worth 4.2, what? Trillion, bingo. That's like 17 zeros. It's a ridiculous denomination for useless paper itself. At a certain point, it's worth physically less than the paper it's been printed on. Now, what happens though is the Americans come in and they help out with war loans and the economy, and this starts about 14 years of a shaky democracy within Germany. It's called the Weimar Republic. Now, a shaky political system, but within Berlin, is this party time. So you have post-World War Berlin, you have jazz, cabaret, all-night cocaine-fueled parties, an outpour of creativity, Dadaism. The party itself does not last forever. It has to end, and the ending point comes when the stock market crashes, 1929. Now, all these foreign war loans are taken away, and the public falls into a state of distress. They've seen failed political systems, and given that point, two very radical political groups start to make a very strong social presence. The left of the political parties are the communists saying, we can rebuild this country through collective work. Together, we can work ourselves out of this. And their political enemies on the far right are the National Socialists, the Nazi party, saying, we can bring the rightful pride lost back to the German public. Now, initially, the Nazi party was not popular, but by January 30th, 1933, Hitler receives the majority of seats in parliament. He's elected Chancellor, second in command in the country. Now, 1 month after he's elected to that position, something really strange occurs. By the way, are you guys all still with me? Yeah? I know it's a lot of information, we're almost done. So something really weird occurs. The Reichstag, the German House of Parliament, plays host to a very suspicious fire. And this event allows Adolf Hitler a way to kill off democracy, take power, and hold it at the end of the Second World War. Now, what happens? Why it's so suspicious? We'll talk about this in a minute. So, at this point, Hitler has power. September 1st, 1939, World War II begins. At that point, troops are sent east and west to make that man's ideas more globally dominant by brute militant force alone. But by 1945, we have a state of great change and death. The Holocaust, the Second World War, a loss of millions of lives, and you would have had then, from the east, 6.7 million Soviet troops coming for Berlin. The west would have been 4.6 million Allied troops, so Americans, British, French, Canadians, all coming to shut down this Nazi capital city. And come early May of 1945, the red flag is waving over the Brandenburg Gate, and the city is taken. Now, after World War II, I should say, Berlin as well as Germany, the idea was, what can we do? Decentralize and denazify. So through negotiations, the Soviets then occupy East Berlin and East Germany. The Allies occupy West Berlin and West Germany. Sounds pretty easy, right? East Berlin, East Germany, West Berlin, West Germany. The tricky part comes if we see a map of the country itself. So if we see a map of Germany, Berlin falls very far towards the east. So this would have been then Soviet-occupied communist land. So West Berlin, amidst all of this, was a very small, capital democratic island amidst a sea of communism. And someone is not happy about West Berlin, and that man is Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Soviet Union. Now, we all know Stalin, yeah? And this man wants Berlin to himself. So listen to this. In June of 1948, he blockades West Berlin. He cuts off ground transportation, medical, food, and water support in and out, assuming that without any help, that half of the city will just collapse. What occurs in response from this was incredible. The Berlin airlift, the Luftbrücke. Every 13 minutes, for 11 months straight, planes from West Germany flew across to West Berlin, bringing food, water, candy, cigarettes, glass, and clothing, enough supplies to build there a functioning hydraulic power plant. That's crazy. Now, after World War II, I should say, the city suffers immensely. 92% of these buildings suffered damage. Half the population were homeless, and there were no trees. Still, those living in West Berlin, although physically blockaded by the Soviets, were living very well with the airplanes and the supplies being dropped off. Those in the east, it was rumored, were starving to death. Now, the following May of 1949, the blockade is lifted and Berlin becomes a free-moving, open city. Now, 1949, two very important things occur. The Allies occupying West Germany and West Berlin. Come on over, it's fine. Yeah, it's fine. It's okay, don't worry about it. I'm just in the middle, just keep on listening, I'll fill you in a second. Occupying West Germany and West Berlin formed that May West Germany. October of 1949, East Germany is formed. So that year alone, the country split in two. Now the odd thing is that, although Berlin is split in half then, although Germany is split in half then, Berlin is still an open, free-moving city. You can move all over it, no problem. And at this point, the West Germans put into a campaign, an idea for the best minds of the East to go to the West. So listen to this. If you were an East German citizen and you physically arrived in West Berlin, the West German authorities would fly you out to West Germany, help you find a car, an apartment, a job, give you some welcome money, and as was rumored, they may even help you find a girlfriend or boyfriend, or both. You're kind of freaky. Okay, like, not both of these things. But if you guys were coming under a new political system that you were not sure of how this functioned, if someone's offering you, a flight out to the West, a job, an apartment, maybe to someone to have a drink with, would you guys take this job, this deal? Yeah. Serious, I would leave in a second. You can best believe people left in huge numbers. From the end of the Second World War to the beginning of the 1960s, you have the leaving of 2.6 million East Germans via West Berlin alone. And those that leave are not just anyone. The richest, the youngest, the highly educated, the most creative. And the government says, we have a leaving crisis. How do we stop the public from leaving? You build a wall. There you go, easy enough. August 13th, 1961, at roughly 4 o'clock in the morning, 40,000 soldiers physically surround half of the city with barbed wire, and thus the Berlin Wall was born. And this wall would not fall for 28 years. But imagine that you are a West Berliner. Your girlfriend, your boyfriend lives right to the east of the city. You go over one night, you stay the evening, of course. You get up the next day to go to work, and blocking your path then are armed guards and barbed wire. From the initial border, thousands lost their jobs, but from this, newlyweds are separated, families are divided, and for 28 consecutive years, again, your contact is limited, if not scrutinized by the government and the surveillance system in place. And I will talk at length about surveillance and Stasi. But the wall does fall, though. November 9th, 1989, one man, one mistake, over the course of a press conference, start to bring down the wall itself. It's a really great story. It's a bit long, and I've talked enough right now, so we'll save it towards the end. Within 1 year of that, though, reform elections occur, finally reuniting Berlin as well as Germany. This happens on October 3rd, 1990. So from then until now, it's been almost 20 years of regrowth, rebuilding, rethinking, change, and here we are, 2010. The history lesson is done.
Well done.
Thank you. Are you guys all set with this? Oh, I appreciate that. Are we all set with this? Yeah? I know this is the hardest part of the whole entire tour. It's an overwhelming amount of info, but it's necessary, and I will fill you guys in a second, I promise. But we need to give ourselves this historical framework to see how the city really functions. So from here on in, the point is now fill in the blanks. So we're going to go right over there to talk about the German House of Parliament and how that building plays a very particular role in Adolf Hitler's rise to power.